Hello. Today is August 30th, 2023, and exactly 140 years ago, sorry for being so emphatic about it, Theo van Doesburg was born. Actually, his name was different. He took this name, Theo first, Doesburg, and then he added, something that Miss van der Rohe also added in the name of an aristocratic touch, which they both wanted. So Theo van Doesburg, born, as you can see, on August 30th, 1883, that's exactly 140 years ago, was a Dutch artist who practiced painting, writing, poetry, and architecture. He is best known as the founder and leader of Stijl. He was married to artist, pianist, and choreographer Nelly van Doesburg. Theo van Doesburg was born Christian Emile Marie Cooper on the 30th of August, 1883. So he was 4 years older than Le Corbusier in Utrecht, Netherlands, as the son of the photographer Wilhelm Cooper and Henrietta Catharina Margrand. After a short period of training in acting and singing, hello. So architects could be also first actors and singers. After a short period of training in acting and singing, he decided to become a storekeeper. He always regarded his stepfather, Theodorus Doesburg, to be his natural father, so that his first works are signed with Theo Doesburg, to which he later added Van, maybe a sign of Van et. The mimetic expression of velocity, whatever its form may be, this is a text he wrote against futurism. So I start again, quoting from him: the mimetic expression of velocity, whatever its form may be, the aeroplane, the automobile, and so on, is diametrically opposed to the character of painting, the supreme origin of which is to be found in inner life. On the 6th of November 1915, he wrote in the same journal, Mondrian realizes the importance of line. The line has almost become a work of art in itself. One cannot play with it when the representation of objects perceived was all important. The white canvas is almost solemn. Each superfluous line, each wrongly placed line, any color placed without veneration of or care can spoil everything. That is the spiritual. It was while reviewing an exposition for one of these magazines he wrote in 1915, halfway through his 2-year service in the army, that he came in contact with the works of Piet Mondrian, also a Dutchman, who was 8 years older than he was, and had by then already gained some attention with his paintings. Theo van Doesburg saw in these paintings his ideal in painting, a complete abstraction of reality. Soon after the exposition, van Doesburg got in contact with Mondrian, and together with related artists Bart van der Lek, Anthony Koch, Wilmos Huchar, and Jacobus Oud, the architect, and they founded the magazine Stijl in 1917. This was the man. Truly, he was considered the ambassador of Stijl, a very important, art movement in Europe in the 20th century. He had some conflicts with Gropius. He would have liked to teach at the Bauhaus, but I read that apparently Gropius didn't have too much sympathy for his ideas, so he was not hired. But this man we are looking at now, he found some housing near the Bauhaus, and he was trying to attract the students to him. I don't know if he succeeded. This picture was taken in 1915 when he was in the war, a sergeant or something, a handsome Dutch sergeant, not surgeon. I guess he liked hats like other architects and other artists. Actually, I noticed that here in Berlad, in fact, I went to Berlad to buy some food, and many people wear hats, but not too many people have this stern look that Theo van Doesburg had in this picture. I've heard he was a difficult man. I also read that he had a chameleonic temperament or personality. He changed from one form of art to another form of art. He even changed names. He used pseudonyms, and there was even a reference to the great Portuguese poet Fernando Pessoa, who also did the same thing. Yeah, maybe a subject for a possible presentation on Zoom, or otherwise could be architecture and pseudonyms. By the way of pseudonyms, I don't know if you know that Peter Eisenman was very fond of the fact that his name, his family name, Eisenman, changing the order of the letters that compose the word, the name Eisenman, would be amnesia. He was very fond of this, that an anagram of his family name would be amnesia. It's not quite like this. One or two letters are not literally like in amnesia, but close enough. Anyway, some drawings of this artist, architect, theoretician, and a catalyst of art, who unfortunately died rather young, understood, of a heart attack at 46 or 47 or so. But he was influenced. There were influences at the beginning of his career as a painter from Vincent van Gogh, and then later from Piet Mondrian. As opposed to Piet Mondrian, he also built buildings. Not many, but he tried his hand at architecture, and we are going to see his architectural work. Theo van Doesburg, Principles of Neoplastic Art. Well, Piet Mondrian also advocated at that time neoplasticism in painting. Theo van Doesburg. Maybe a self-portrait here. An animal, maybe a cow, abstracted. Some paintings by Theo van Doesburg. Every time I pronounce his name, I think of the brother Vincent van Gogh, Theo van Gogh, who was a remarkable man. And once in New York, there was a retrospective of the paintings of Vincent van Gogh, and there was a huge banner, yellow with blue written Vincent on it. And yes, it was a glorious retrospective, but I thought it was not quite fair. There should have been two banners there, two flags actually. They were like flag, a huge flag. There should have been one with the name Theo, because without Theo, Vincent could not have painted. Yes, Vincent van Gogh made those incredible paintings, but without his brother, who helped him with food and colors and brushes, he could not have painted. So in a certain way, the great paintings of Vincent van Gogh belonged also to Theo. And this was understood by Theo's wife, who decided when Theo died, Theo, who was younger than Vincent van Gogh, died less than 1 year after Vincent van Gogh died. And she decided that the two brothers should be buried together. I find this very emotional. But in a certain way, they belong together. And when Vincent died, Theo died. But now back to Theo van Doesburg. I think we need idealism in art. We need effervescence. We need exuberance. We need to push towards that very spiritual that was mentioned by Theo van Doesburg. It is said that the Dutch are pragmatic people. Maybe they are, but we saw that word, spiritual. Also, Mondrian had equally an interest in the spiritual side of art, and he was not alone. it's enough to also think again at Vincent van Gogh and many, many other artists and architects that this great country, the Netherlands, had and has and will have. At this very moment, there are very important architects coming from the Netherlands because they continuously search for something else, for the new. They experiment a lot. They experiment a lot, but they also have a great tradition in building, for example, great cathedrals. In the 19th century, I mean, there is a great tradition of building, approximately Gothic or neo-Gothic churches and cathedrals, plenty of them all over the Netherlands. So these great innovators also had a certain respect and reverence for the past. And simultaneous with the Stijl movement, there was the School of Amsterdam movement, a very different architectural movement, and I would say equally, valuable or of value. The School of Amsterdam and Stijl. But now we look at the ambassador of Stijl, some would say even almost the founder or one of the founders of the Stijl movement, which included also Gerrit Rietveld, another great artist, cabinet maker who became architect and built not only Villa Schröder, but many other buildings, some of them quite remarkable. So whoever says that architecture is not an art, first, that someone should be confronted with a sobering fact that there is no history of art which does not include in its pages architecture. Second, many architects practiced other forms of art, graphic art, painting, sculpture, and so on. So Stijl, 1917, 1931. It lasted for about the same period of time, the same length of time as the Bauhaus. The Bauhaus also lasted for 13, almost 14 years, and so did Stijl. Architecture, Theo van Doesburg. Axonometrics, where we do not see, the exasperating prosaic elements with which are confronted most students in the schools of architecture. We don't see the parking lot, we don't see Its Majesty the refrigerator, we do not see Its Majesty the toilet or WC. We do not see these things which can they are part of life, obviously. But why is it that major presences in the history of architecture, they were searching for the essence of architecture, the spirit of architecture, what makes architecture deserve its name, and the more prosaic aspects of architecture, they were addressed, but not as the most important elements. Plus, we have to understand that Theo van Doesburg, like other innovators, was searching for a new architecture, for a different kind of architecture. I mean, if this building was built today, I am convinced, it would be published by the major magazines and e-signs and so on, and blogs. Yes, it would. Because it is born from a vision. And yes, the pragmatic level maybe is not, yet totally working or refined, but its realization and its visualization are based on a vision. And this was the vision of Theo van Doesburg at that time, more than 100 years ago. He didn't receive any training in architecture, nor did Gerrit Rietveld. So who taught these people architecture? Who taught these people design? And why are they still relevant? Well, they are relevant exactly because they bring to architecture, you know, the refreshing spirit of innovation, of creativity, and joy. Yes, joy. Café L'Aubette, Strasbourg, an important work by him. He didn't build too much. As I said, he died rather young, and he did many other things. In fact, I wanted, now I regret I closed my, there was an article published in, I think, in Great Britain about him, a very good article, and I would have liked to read it, but I don't know if I can find it now. Maybe I'll read it tomorrow. Anyway, this is Café L'Aubette in Strasbourg, in France. He actually moved to France, and we are going to see his own house that he built. But this is a very important work. And I read that actually Theo van Doesburg had an influence on an important Australian architect, Harry Seidler, who was actually born in Vienna, in Austria, and emigrated when the Second World War started. Yes, this particular work and the writings of Theo van Doesburg had an influence on Harry Seidler, a very important Australian architect. And if you go to Paris, you'll see the embassy of Australia in France, which was designed by him. But closer to us, you could see two towers built by him in Vienna, Harry Seidler. We see here the love of diagonals by Theo van Doesburg. I read that, you know, he was very good friends with Piet Mondrian, but at one point they broke apart because apparently Theo van Doesburg loved diagonals while Piet Mondrian didn't. But they regained their friendship years later when they met accidentally in a cafe in Paris. That's what I read. So here everything was done by Theo van Doesburg. We were talking yesterday about ornament. Well, what else are those you know, geometrical figures, colored or white, rotated and so on? It's a form of ornamentation which unites the ceiling with the walls and you know, animates the space, because architecture is not just space. There are other elements, you know, tectonics, tactility, the treatment of surfaces, chromatic or otherwise. There are many elements that compose architecture. It's not just space, and it's not just structure. So this work is in Strasbourg in France. There is a great cathedral in Strasbourg, which Goethe admired immensely. So if you arrive in Strasbourg, of course you will see the cathedral, but please don't forget this cafe designed by Theo van Doesburg. Maybe you could have a coffee there. It doesn't look like an intimidatingly expensive space. No, it's probably for you know, artists and proletarians. And this is I don't know exactly where this is, but I'm not even sure if it was done by him or a follower of Theo van Doesburg, but it uses the aesthetics of Stijl. So the cafe is in this building. Axonometric drawings by him. He was an artist through and through. And wouldn't it be beautiful if more architects were artists too? I think it would be. But this does not mean that the architect neglects, you know, the logic of construction. There were great artists who were very careful about what we call, you know, structure or detailing and intricate matters having to do with building. Avant-garde apostle, Theo van Doesburg, that's exactly what he was. He was advocating with fervor the avant-garde. And as I said at the beginning, today there are 150 years since he was born. Maison van Doesburg in Meudon in France is his own house, which now is some kind of a foundation. And that's how it is now after he died and his wife died. This is a photograph of the building from the time when he was alive. Well, maybe for us it doesn't look too impressive. We have seen buildings like this one, but you have to understand that this was built, almost 100 years ago, and there is a modernness here which is still fresh. I truly think that art is beautiful if it is lived as an adventure. If you give your whole being and your whole heart and your whole mind and your whole imagination and your whole talent to art, yes, it's a form of sacrifice, but it's a beautiful sacrifice. And I think it's worth it. So the house of the family Doesburg in Meudon in France. You see the building on the left, and then you see his building, and then the building on the right. There is some distance between them. Atelier van Doesburg, Meudon. That was it. Very short and rather unsatisfactory presentation, but we remembered Theo van Doesburg on his birthday today, the 30th of August, 2023. Thank you.